Hello and welcome to the Leading Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Dubose. Here in the Leading Lounge, we talk with today's leaders and unpack lessons learned and being learned from a career of leading and communicating in their field. These conversations are designed to be both informal and informative, and we want to equip you with wisdom and tools to empower you as a leader where you are and where you want to be. Have you ever felt like traditional or conventional routes to success and management and leadership are not for you, and perhaps you feel stuck or trapped by that? Well, today's guest, Nathan Moore, opens up about his journey to the leadership position that he's in today and how very unconventional and non-traditional it was. Nathan grew up as the youngest son of a community college president. And rather than go the conventional route to college, he went to the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College. Yes, it's a real college. I didn't know it was a real college either. He went to Clown College and spent a few years in the circus as a circus clown with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. And he opens up on the rest of his journey, but he's now a senior director at Heartland. He was the former vice president of sales. But he really opens up about his journey and how chasing success can have other undesirable consequences, things that maybe you don't see initially, and how he reset with God and with his career and with his family to really get on a healthier, more God-honoring, more sustainable pathway to success and sustainable leadership. Nathan has plenty of wisdom. He's a wonderful man. I'm blessed to know him, and you'll be blessed by listening to this episode. So listen up and enjoy all that Nathan has to say here today. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Leading Lounge. Thanks for joining us. Excited to have a special guest, Nathan Moore. I really appreciate you being willing to give me some time and share some of your story and just some things you've picked up along the way. So I'll start with the first question I like to ask everybody that I sit down with, which is just, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and share with us the professional journey that got you to where you are today?
Yeah. So my faith and family always come first, and the Heartland opportunity truly changed me and my family's lives forever. The year was 2005, and we were right on the horizon of MacArthur being born on April 25th of 2006. And I've been in food distribution sales, and many of you will know Cisco, US Foods, PFG. And unbeknownst to many people, I didn't take a traditional path of graduating from high school and then going to college. And that's pretty odd for a son of a community college president. I took a very non-traditional path. And I was always in theater in school and wanted to continue to pursue theater and live entertainment. And this is where it's a blessing having a father that was a college administrator. He encouraged me my junior year. He said, hey, listen, Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Clown College is having clown college auditions. You should apply. I was like, Dad, there's no way. 5,000 apply. They only accept 30. He's like, listen, this is what you told me you wanted to do when you were 5. Did you forget about it? And I had already been accepted into at the time, it was a 2-year institution called Brevard College. I grew up a good United Methodist, and Brevard was a Methodist school. And my plan was to go to Brevard College, major in radio and TV, and transfer to North Carolina and continue on down that path. And I ended up auditioning for Clown College, and it went so well, I auditioned again. And the year of 1992, I was accepted into the 25th graduating class of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College. Since so many people are connected to you through the military, they always consider Clown College as the boot camp for circus clowns. Because if you think about Ringling Brothers or any traveling circus, many circus performers are generational born. Like if you've got a higher wire act, let's take somebody like the Walendas. They're 6th and 7th generation of doing high wire act. You take famous animal trainers, whether it's Grant Thomas Chipperfield, or I got the great pleasure of being around Gunther Gable Williams. You're talking generationals. But the only two groups that come into the circus that are outside of your formal generational performers is the dancers and the clowns. And it was very ingenious of Urban Feld in 1968 when he founded Clown College. He said, we've got to get a way to keep our funnel full. And you think about all of you that are listening, that are in the military. I mean, they're recruiting because they want to accept 30 clowns. If they can get 8 to 10 to go on both of their units, because Ringling Brothers has 2 units at the time, a red unit and a blue unit. That way they can keep the funnel full and keep their shows full of clowns. That operated all the way up until, and bear with me, I think the last year was maybe 97 or 98. Ringling and Kenneth Feld, who is the producer of Feld Entertainment, it's the largest live entertainment producer in America. They stopped Clown College. This is prior to Ringling stopped touring. Why that is so important for our talk today is because I wanted to set the stage for you of, number one, the incredible made-up pressure that I put on myself of being the baby of 6 kids of the community college president's son. All my brothers and sisters were going off to UNCW, Appalachian. Wait, but the president's son of the college is going to Clown College? And we heard this in our community.
Sure.
School wasn't easy for me. What was easy for me is theater, athletics. And during that time, I learned that I was very much an audio learner. And the reason that's important is because people couldn't understand. And about the 11th grade, I had an AP English teacher. Her name was Miss Caldwell. And if she ever listens to this, I think she's still alive. My dad came to see her one day, and she said, Dr. Moore, when Nathan came into my class, I thought he was a valedictorian. But on paper, he's an F student. And what we realized at that point is the reason I could learn my play lines and everybody else's, the reason I could learn my football play. I mean, Justin, there were many Friday nights that we would line up to get ready to run a play, and I'd have a running back come up to me and go, hey, Nathan, what I do here? And I go, oh, well, you run out 4 yards and come across. Because everything I hear audio-wise, I just don't forget.
Yeah, it sticks.
So the reason that that's important for people is because I want people to understand, just because you don't fit in the academia box that we have unfortunately created here in this country, I don't want you to think that you're any less of a person, because this guy did. I thought, man, I struggle so much from an academic standpoint that this is really the path that I need to go. And I began to tell myself these made-up stories. I had made-up stories in my head of, well, I'm a performer, so college is not important. And then it became, I was on a mission to prove that you didn't have to go to college to be successful. And being the baby brother, Nathan was a clown with Ringling Brothers. I spent 3.5 years with the show. And that ultimately put me into corporate leadership in restaurants. After 9/11, as many people thought, I thought the world was ending. So I came back to North Carolina, and that's how I got into food distribution sales. But my wife and I would hang out with my brothers and sisters, and I had 2 of them that were very involved in pharmaceutical sales. And this was the heyday, Justin. 2002, 2003, 2004, all the money was being made. And I was like, man, I want that life. I want to change. I didn't have a college degree. So I enrolled in Mount Olive College and started going to school as a professional adult. And newsflash, it wasn't because I wanted an education. It was because I wanted that piece of paper. Meantime, Heartland recruited me. What made Heartland very unique, besides the fact that one of their founders is from North Carolina, is they have 100% performance-based sales force, which was unheard of in the payments business. And so I started in 2006, and within 3 months, I had made more money than I had made in an entire year in my food distribution career.
Wow.
Suddenly, my self-worth starts to pick up. And then they come to me and say, gosh, you did such a great job at Heartland. Would you like to be a territory manager? I was like, well, sure. They're like, well, you're going to have to relocate to Charlotte. No problem. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are listening, you're hearing this Heartland, what is it? Well, I want to pause and tell you that if you purchased a snack or gas at 7-Eleven or Citgo or Marathon, that was Heartland. Apple Pay, NFC, and Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express at the pump and in the store. Been to a local pub or an auto repair, earn points. Who designed Subway's loyalty program? Visited a Kroger or a Giant Eagle lately and noticed all the gift cards for sale at the end of the aisle? Heartland again. So Heartland allowed someone that didn't have a college degree, that through grit and hard work, and we're going to come back to grit at the end, allowed me to obtain what I thought was the true worth, which, number one, I was passing all my brothers and sisters that worked at big pharma that had their big college degree. Then I got promoted. Then they asked me to be a division manager. Then they asked me to be a regional director. And this was in 2008. And I had all of Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Alabama. And here's the sad part of that story. At the beginning of 2010, my wife woke me up in the middle of the night. It was about 4:30. I was making a little over $18,000 a month.
Wow.
Said we can't pay our bills. You can't pay your bills. How in the world can anybody make $18,000 a month, give or take $500, and you couldn't pay your bills? Well, let me tell you why. Because I was searching that money, and now that I had it, that money wasn't enough. Went out and bought a Porsche. Went out and bought a Cobalt boat. That's like the Mercedes-Benz of boats. Mm-hmm. Built a brand new house up towards Lake Norman. And man, I was getting filled up on all the stuff. And it was like God said, hold on, time out. You're trying to earn your worth through your position, but I'm going to tell you what you're getting ready to do. You're getting ready to end up divorced. You're getting ready to have somebody else raising your child, and you're going to make a decision right here and right now. And I did something that was unheard of at Heartland, and I walked away from Heartland. And the reason I walked away is because I had to remove myself from this obsessive lifestyle. No, it wasn't like Wolf of Wall Street where I was out partying. That never really was me. Mm-hmm. But I was trying to earn my worth so much about what I did. So if you think back that I started my career with Heartland in 2006 and then jumped to a territory manager position in 2007, and then by 2008, I was running 5 different states for the company. It was a very fast track. Mm-hmm. Gentleman that didn't have a college degree. What pausing in 2010 allowed me to do is, number one, realign myself spiritually. I said it, but I still had not been truly convicted to change everything in my life. I was still caught up in what kind of car I drive. What does everybody think? My wife didn't have 1 Coach bag. She had 5 Coach bags. During that spending spree, we didn't go just buy 1 Lexus. We went and bought 2. Mm. And what I realized was that something that I never understood from my grandparents, it never matters how much money you make or the position you make. It matters what you do with it and why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And that started a revelation for me professionally and spiritually, where I launched my own business. Heartland pays with residual income, which means that your book of business, once it's vested, you get paid on that every single month, even when you leave the company. And to this day, they still pay their people like this. I took a huge step out in faith to rejoin my family. And a year later, it wasn't some lightning strikes and everything else. It was just like God gave me a little whisper and said, all right, this is your chance. Are you going to give me everything? And I'm not talking about just a little bit. Are you going to give it all to me? You got to remember, we had lost everything. Mm-hmm. Everything. The only thing I had was that residual income. And when I started that business, I made a commitment, number one, that I was going to start a business with no debt. Number two, little did I know that God had a vision for me to start this business to hire nonviolent felons and individuals with simple misdemeanors. I want to give you a reality. If you make a poor decision in the United States of America, and I said poor decision, you're going to have a very tough job, very tough time getting a job in any place, especially if you're a nonviolent felon. It was amazing to me to watch that one of the first people I hired was a former airline pilot that had got involved in an investing scheme, and his money was taken. And unfortunately, through very poor judgment, he decided to threaten a bank president. That's not a good idea. Don't ever threaten. How are you going to get the FBI in? And he didn't have the money to defend himself, so he went to federal prison, which led to somebody that knew somebody. And I started partnering with the Salvation Army, and I watched God use me where we didn't know where money was coming from. All I knew is that I was just going to go out every single day and try to impact these folks. And what started out with just 2 of us, then turned into 4 of us, then turned into 6 of us, then turned into 8 of us, in a business that within 3 years, we were doing business with everything from the Biltmore estate, not the house, but cleaning all their restaurants. We had 95% of every restaurant up in Asheville, North Carolina. It was called FGFT. And I want to pause there because when I started FGFT, I started it with the idea it was called Fried Green Friar Team because I was trying to play into the trend of being green. Suddenly, I dropped that Fried Green Friar Team, and little did I know that right in front of my eyes, it was for God full time. And when I made that transition mentally, and even on the corporation docs, I put co-founder. I made my son the president because I realized if I was working for Nathan, I wouldn't work as hard. But if I'm a co-founder with God and I'm using my talents as God has called me to do, then I'm going to treat it a little bit different. And in 2015, I sold that business and then came back to Heartland because we were looking at buying an Anytime Fitness or a Subway. And I started my career all over again at Heartland. And I chose that I was going to do it different. But I wanted to sort of intertwine that whole piece for you because that's what will be the foundation for everything else we talk about today.
No, that's good because a lot of times when you talk to people, these conversations center on all the qualifications that you need for this job. First, I did this. I went to this school. Then I got this job. Then I had this assignment. Then I did this thing. One of the things I find myself, so in my role as an Army chaplain, talking to a lot of young soldiers, and my current assignment is out in California. So I ended up talking to all these young, California kids. And I'm like, look, the things that you really need to succeed are not, you're not going to pick them up in a classroom. You're not going to inherit them from your mom or your dad. They're trusting the Lord and then just loving people and being good with people and being trustworthy and actually caring about people and what you do. And so, no, I appreciate you kind of leaning into that side of the story. So in your role now, so what's your role at Heartland now?
So I've just finished 5 very exciting years of being the vice president. I oversaw a national sales force of 62 professionals and 17 territory managers and 9 division managers in Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Nevada. And as of November 1, I took a promotion to on the corporate side to actually be the senior director of financial institutions for our strategic partner management program. So we're the largest issuer of credit cards, but we also partner with many well-known banks across the United States. And our SPMs, which stands for Strategic Partner Management, actually manage a portfolio of 10 to 15 banks. That's not 10 to 15 branches. Like one bank could have 125 branches. They facilitate our entire merchant payroll e-commerce offering because, as I said earlier, banks don't do this. They
Right.
have a partner come in. So my role is to stand up that actual program and coach and train the other SPMs, some which will be hired and some that we already have, to continue to strengthen our relationship through our suite of products for our financial institution partners. Number one, it was very much out of my comfort zone. Number two, being in the VP role for the last 5 years, it almost became second nature for the role. And though the people will always create challenges because you're dealing with people and we're broken and fallible, on the other side, I felt like it was time for me to take what I learned from the outside sales force and be able to apply it in a more strategic strategy role long term, because that will help our financial institution partners.
Yeah. No, that's good. So in your role now, and all the way, really, it sounds like back to the beginning of Heartland, communication has been a big part of what you do. Communicate with people, communicating with partners, communicating with, team members you oversee and that kind of thing. And it's one of the focuses of the podcast, in particular interest of mine, is communicating. So I'm curious, in your role, you've got something different than a lot of people, which is you do a lot of that like this, like we're doing on Zoom virtually, I presume. So I'm sure you found some things that don't really work, but in the new kind of post-COVID world, what are some ways you found that those people that you have to communicate with and you got to lead from a distance, how can you do that in a way that they really respond well to?
I'm going to lean on someone that for many people will know who he is. And for some of our younger listeners, I want them to go out and find out who he is. Zig Ziglar, who was a famous sales writer. He started out in a career in cookware and he was really the precursor to John Maxwell, Tony Robbins, and all them. But he made a statement that questions are the answer. And the reason that's important is because the first and foremost, you've got to develop trust with your colleagues and anybody you're serving. You got to maintain consistent communication. You're like, yeah, no doubt, Nathan. That's why I asked the question. You got to show appreciation and respect for others. And you got to be positive. So how are you going to do that in a very authentic manner, but understand that it can't be treated as a task? It's got to be treated as an authentic relationship that sometimes takes time.
Yep.
And I like to preface it like this, Justin. I'm asked to be an MC many, many times for different things. But being an MC is very different than being a speaker. You know, whether I've served as MC for a pageant or a corporate event, I find that it involves a different set of skills from giving a speech. But at the same time, a good master of ceremony needs similar traits to a speaker. And if you think about it, in many ways, the MC role can be more difficult. It's part storyteller, part technician, and part ringmaster.
Okay.
So when you think about how an MC can make a difference in the success of an event, I'm reminded of things like the Academy Awards. All of us can think back to our favorite hosts. One of my favorite was Billy Crystal. He sort of set the tone. But each time you organize an event, and you have to remember that the MC makes a direct impact on the success for the show. The reason this is important is because I realized, having taken on teams pre-COVID, during COVID, after COVID, hiring people that I never met face to face, I needed to have a system that wasn't just a system to check a box. So for me, in order to be a really good storyteller, I had to look at it as, you think about, to be a really good master of ceremonies, you got to prepare for the opening. So in leadership and communication, if you just come out and start the introductions, think about if the Olympics started with some folks running a race or lifting weights. But you know, they have a choreographed open ceremonies. You need the same thing. So crafting a pertinent story that draws in the audience. And in coaching and communication, you need to draw people on, and it draw people in. So it goes back to thinking about developing a trust. So how are you going to develop that trust? Well, first off, you need to stop and understand, what are the people that you're communicating passionate about? Whether it's someone in the support center, whether it's someone up your boss directly, you've got to find out what are things that they're passionate about. And newsflash, I don't care if you're standing in the line at the Walmart, or you're at Buc-ee's in Texas, or you are standing yourself on the basketball court watching your daughter's game. Anytime you get around people, if you find out what they're most passionate about, that is a great place to start in communicating, because communication is based on relationships. And you can do things such as asking them, what are your greatest accomplishments in life so far?
Mm-hmm.
If your life absolutely had no limits, what would you choose to have, and what would you choose to do? What are your goals right now? Who do you admire? What do you not like to do? How hard are you willing to get what you want? And if you focus on just those little questions, when you go back and you remember that Justin and Nathan are not the star of this show when we communicate, back in putting it in the box of preparing for an MC, our personality sets the tone for the event. And what happens a lot with young people in corporate America is they've been taught these things to ask, but they don't take time to keep track of that information. I'm reading a fantastic book, and it's Kate Murphy. I'm not trying to promote her book, but the book is called You're Not Listening. And one of the things that she puts out there is that so many times, and I even highlighted this, and I didn't know that I was going to share with this. She said, what did I just learn about that person? What was most concerning to that person today? How did that person feel about what you were talking about? If you can't answer those questions, you probably need to work on your listening. If you go into every situation thinking you already know everything, it limits your ability to grow, learn, connect, and evolve. Now, if we look through the lens of the United States Army, sometimes they have to communicate, and that sits in between life and death. But your role as being a chaplain, you can take that pause and really listen, because in order to be an effective communicator, you've got to be able to ask questions. And in order to ask questions, you've got to develop the trust, and you've got to maintain consistent communication. It can't just be, well, I'm a chaplain, I've got to go talk to that. And this goes for anybody in any of their jobs.
Right.
Changing tires or working at Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is not paying me to say this. I'm just in awe of this chain.
I was going to say, you get like 25 points for the Buc-ee's references, man. I appreciate you.
Buddy, listen, I love what this young lady, Hannah Clark, before Allison and I, and the one opened in Florence, she said, Mr. Nathan, Miss Allison, Buc-ee's is like if Walmart and Hobby Lobby had a baby. And you know what? I got to give her credit. She's pretty spot on.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I've told people that too. Echo exactly what you're saying is communicate. It's just like the education, the professional journey question. It's not a matter of knowing technically how to communicate well, using the most precise words or tonality, or being an expert in whatever your field is and knowing exactly how to answer every question. But you got to actually care about these people. I interviewed a guy last year on this podcast, Chris Campbell. I think it was my second episode after Jennifer Noble. But he talked about how in his business, he said, we're working on slowing down. So when I tell someone, hey, this is what I need you to do, we'll have this engagement that feels like it takes a long, long time, like it's taking away from productivity of just, okay, tell me what you heard. Okay, now let me make sure this is what I said. Now, if I understand what you're saying, let me make sure I'm listening to you. You're saying this. So he said, well, we'll eat up a bunch of time in the day making sure we're actually listening to each other. But in the end, we make sure that I know them and they know me, and we're both on the same page. So So yeah, caring is essential to communicating. So with the communication, you've got, it never stops. I'm sure 24 hours a day you could be communicating with somebody. Work never stops with not only the scope of what you got going on, but the fact that you can do it from your bedroom or from your kitchen or from an airplane or from Buc-ee's or wherever. So one of the big problems personally that I struggle with and other people that I talk to struggle with is just work-life balance. It's a term that always gets thrown out, but you've been doing this thing a long time. What are some ways you found where you personally do a good job at it, and how do you know? What are the mechanisms where you're like, okay, I got to shut it off, and I don't know, how do you know when to turn it off and just sometimes even just ignore work demands or people?
This is an area that I grew when I walked away from Heartland. Prior to 2010, I was married to my job, because you got to remember, I was getting my entire self-worth from, number one, the income I was making, number two, the position. And Allison will openly admit to you today that had something not changed, I was just acting like a Disney dad. So I would swoop in, go in my office starting at 7 and 8 in the morning. I would come out, play with MacArthur, do a few little Play-Doh, and then I would come back in my office and work because I loved it. I authentically loved what I was doing. I loved the chase. Mm-hmm. But the problem is I was allowing the chase professionally to fill me up more than what should have been filling me up, which is my Heavenly Father. So when I came back to Heartland in 2015 and started my career all over again as a sales rep, a year later, they asked me to be a division manager. And then by the end of that year, they asked me to be a VP again. I made a commitment that I was going to do this different. And it was as simple as time blocking my time. And I literally go into Google Calendar, and I could share my Google Calendar right now with you. And I literally put in my calendar, Winter and Coco eat, they go outside, arrive at the office, review day, check email. And then I would put my task. And then literally every evening, family time from 6 to 9, every evening. And it's blocked out, including from 12:45 to 1:45, I'm going to exercise. So I had to stay disciplined to my schedule, because either I take control or either all of us take control of our schedule, or we'll default to someone else's schedule. I like to start every single day. I do it religiously. Even on my planner, I have these books made, and it starts with the Bible. I start off with prayers for the day. This happened to be the salvation prayer. I was reminded of that again. What are the things that I'm thankful for? And then my must-dos. Here were my must-dos for the day. Now, for the Gen Z and the millennials, they'll laugh and say, that guy's a dork. He still handwrites stuff. But I still like to have highlighters, because I still put dates of what I read in the Bible. But prior to doing this, I just kept reacting. Yeah. And now I feel like I don't react anymore. I feel like I tell my day what to do.
You're not a slave to the tyranny of the urgent. Whoever's screaming the loudest gets your attention.
Not anymore. One of the greatest things that have changed in this new role, because now I have someone helping me on this. I used to get 250 to 260 emails a day. Literally, the first week in my new role, I sent a message to IT and I said, is there something wrong with my email? They're like, no, somebody else is getting some of your emails now. They filter them. I was like, oh, I didn't know this was even possible. All throughout the day, literally there would be text all day. And because I began my day in that, what I call my monkey mind, when I slowed my mind down and really started off from where I need to be. And I know this is cliche, Justin, and we don't have to start our day in prayer to earn God's grace and satisfaction. But I just got to tell you, I would put anybody to the test if you will start every day acknowledging that you can do nothing without His grace and direction. It is unbelievable, because when I put it to test, or when I have to get to the airport and wanted to sleep a little bit later, it is total chaos. Total chaos. And I just can't encourage people enough. Just try it and see, because I think you're going to be shocked, because we are living in such a busy. Think about it, man. Our lives are so jam-packed with tasks and responsibilities that we ultimately struggle to identify which one are the most important to us, that are our priorities.
Yeah.
Even if we make a concerted effort to go through all our tasks and pick out the ones we should prioritize, we still end up with too much on our hands.
Yep.
So this overload of stuff massively hinders our productivity. And luckily, however, we can get our priorities straight by adopting essentialism.
That's good. One question, Nathan, I love to ask everybody, because I've learned that people love success stories. I always love George Washington. Well, you mentioned, people listening can't see it, but one of the pictures in my office is George Washington kneeling and praying at Valley Forge. But so people love to read about successes, but they can identify more with people's failures. So
100%.
One of the questions I love to ask people is just tell me about a time when you failed at communicating. One specific story, one specific instance. What'd you learn from it, and how did it change your approach to how you communicate going forward?
Interesting enough, I don't know if you've gotten this from anybody else, but I fail at communicating daily. And you might say, hold on, wait a second now. I thought your whole role was about communicating. I learned several years ago that I need to leave every conversation with, does that match what you need? And did I miss anything? Does that match what you need? And did I miss anything? Now, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this with Elena. I want you to think about this with your kids. I want you to think about this. Well, you probably shouldn't do it if a Texas Ranger pulls you over. But anybody else in life, does that match what you need? Did I miss anything? The reason I say that I fail at communicating daily is because I'm dealing with multiple different personalities. And I'm as guilty as anyone that sometimes I'm so excited to share or relate something that I heard back to the person that I might not be listening. I have to keep my communication antenna in check daily. Do I fail every single day? No. But if I'm going back every single day in every discussion, and I might not get to do it one-on-one with someone, but I get out of I go back to back to back with virtual meetings. And I might not be able to say, does that match what you need? Did I miss anything? But what I can do is when I'm looking back today, and I said, okay, we had an SPM plan review with my direct boss and one of my coworkers. I did not get to ask my boss, does that match what you need? Did I miss anything? But what I did realize is he asked me that he wanted me to go to his boss on Wednesday and present what we shared today. That let me know that, number one, he appreciated the communication. Number two, he appreciated the information we shared, and he sees it so valuable that he wants me to take it to the next level. If after every interaction, if you will mentally ask yourself, did that match what they needed? And did I miss anything? And if you'll keep your eyes and ears open daily, that we can always improve in communication. Because here's what is going on in society right now. People will share their views and they'll cross their arms and say, well, you don't understand where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. Well, what if we looked at it as maybe I didn't understand how you explained it, or maybe I didn't ask good enough questions to understand. And I think that's where the power comes to go back, not to be cheesy, to go back to what Zig Ziglar said. Did we ask the questions to seek to respond, or did we ask the questions to understand?
Yeah.
And did we really listen? And I love what you said about your friend that, that they're slowing down.
Yeah.
Looking at that individual and saying, does that match what you need? Did I miss anything? Allows the space to say, as a matter of fact, I didn't understand what you said here. Or because I'm always going to be my authentic self, maybe the way I described or explained something didn't resonate with that individual. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would encourage. And I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as you need to constantly be learning daily of how to communicate, but don't let the confusion of the noise of social media, TV, radio, that's not communication. Mm-hmm. Communication is meeting people where they are. Even when people are making decisions that we might not agree with, we still need to listen and be present. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we might learn something that'll really change our lives long term.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, that's good stuff. And like I said earlier, I appreciate you taking the time to share it with me. Your story is very unique. I didn't know that clown college was even a thing until I was at your house when you guys lived in Chadburn and saw this diploma-looking thing hanging on the wall. Oh, where's this? Oh, clown college. So anyway, your experiences, your background, like your story of how God navigated you through all this stuff, it's a blessing to me, and I know it's going to be a blessing to everybody else who listens. So I appreciate it, man, and praying that God continue to put you in positions where you can bless and influence others. So thanks.
Well, I'm proud of you. You're special. You're someone that I admire, and I want you to continue to be encouraged. We have a real opportunity in society right now, and it excites me because what we do professionally is just the vehicle to fund what we really have been called to do.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Great commission. And that's what gets me excited. So,
yeah. Well, thanks again. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Leading Lounge. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. The Leading Lounge is brought to you by Communicate to Care, where we are building better leaders by building better people. For more information, visit us online at www.communicatecare.com. This is your host, Dr. Justin Dubose, and we'll see you next time, right here in the Leading Lounge.